You could hear a pin drop. One sentence from Jasmine Crockett, and the entire hearing room froze. Not a whisper. Not a shuffle. Just the sound of truth slamming into comfort. She didn't yell. She didn't need to. Her words cut sharper than any headline. Not all skinfolk are kinfolk. And Congressman Donalds? You're the proof. In that moment, the conversation stopped being about policy. It became about identity, history, and the price of silence. Cameras rolled. Twitter exploded. And America asked itself, who gets to speak for us, and who's just wearing the mask? It was supposed to be routine. A standard committee hearing on federal support programs for historically disadvantaged communities. Nameplates were neatly arranged. Cameras were quietly humming. Pages moved briskly between seats with stacks of folders. But everyone who had been in this room before, everyone who knew the names Jasmine Crockett and Byron Donalds, knew this wasn't going to be business as usual. Jasmine Crockett sat near the end of the Democratic bench, her posture calm, but her pen tapping rhythmically against a folded note in her lap. A small, worn photo peeked from the inside cover of her binder. Her grandmother, smiling beside a church doorway in Texas, 1964. Jasmine often carried that photo during committee hearings. It reminded her who she spoke for. Across the aisle, Byron Donalds flipped through briefing documents with confident precision. His cufflinks gleamed, his expression unreadable. Unlike Crockett, who wore her purpose like a badge, Donalds wore politics like armor, polished, reinforced, and ready for war. Their ideological clashes had become legendary inside the Beltway. Sparks flew whenever they shared a microphone, but today, the oxygen in the room felt different. The chairman banged his gavel. The Committee on Oversight and Accountability will come to order. Opening statements began. Witnesses shared statistics, stories, policy recommendations. Members nodded, asked questions, took notes. Everything unfolded as expected, until Byron Donalds leaned forward. What we continue to ignore in these conversations, he said, voice calm but firm, is how government dependence erodes the very resilience that once defined the Black community. During the Jim Crow era, despite facing brutal oppression, our people built businesses, supported each other, thrived in the face of injustice. That self-sufficiency is what we've lost. The words hung in the air like a flare shot over dry grass. Jasmine stopped tapping her pen. The hearing room, once filled with murmured note shuffling and occasional throat clears, went still. Several aides glanced up. One journalist muttered, "Here it comes." Jasmine slowly closed her binder. "I recognize the gentlewoman from Texas for 5 minutes," the chairman announced. She adjusted her microphone. No smile. No theatrics. Just steel. "I came here prepared to speak about the measurable impact of these programs, how they reduce poverty, expand opportunity, close gaps. But I can't ignore what I just heard." Then she turned fully deliberately to face him. "Congressman Donalds, this isn't the first time you've suggested that life under Jim Crow somehow built strength. And frankly, I have to ask, do you not understand what that system actually did to Black Americans? Or are you choosing to revise that history to make a point that's more palatable to certain audiences?" The temperature in the room dropped. A reporter dropped a pen. Donalds responded quickly, "That's a mischaracterization. I didn't praise Jim Crow. I spoke about resilience, what communities created in spite of it." Jasmine's voice didn't rise, but her words sliced clean. "My grandmother didn't tell stories about strength under segregation. She told stories about fear. About standing in line for a school that didn't want her. About hiding her dreams in silence. Resilience wasn't a choice. It was survival." The committee chair tapped his gavel, but no one looked away. "Let me be clear," she continued. "This continued framing, that oppression produced virtue, isn't just misleading. It's dangerous, because it lets us forget the cost. And worse, it allows those who benefit from sanitized history to weaponize it against those still suffering from its consequences." In that moment, the hearing became something else. Not policy, not politics. It became personal. It became memory. It became a question of truth, and who had the right to tell it. The chairman's gavel tapped once more, trying to reel the hearing back into order. But the room had already shifted. The tension wasn't just between two representatives, it was in every corner, every breath, every camera lens trained on the unfolding clash. Donalds leaned in again, this time abandoning the polished politician tone. "What I'm saying," he began, "is that we dishonor the people who endured by acting as if their resilience meant nothing. They fought, built, survived. And now we pretend that success only comes through government handouts. Jasmine didn't flinch. Their resilience was real, she said. But don't confuse forced endurance with chosen strength. You keep bringing up businesses, institutions, pride, as if those things weren't born out of exclusion. They built their own systems because the real ones shut them out. A ripple moved through the audience. You think I don't know that? Donald shot back. My grandfather couldn't even vote until he was almost 40. My mother worked 2 jobs so I could go to college. Don't talk to me like I haven't lived that reality. Jasmine paused. Her voice dropped just slightly. Then I don't understand how you can take that truth and still turn it into a narrative that justifies cutting off help to people still fighting to get through the same doors your family had to break open. Donald's jaw clenched. The silence thickened. No one moved. Even the stenographer had stopped typing. And then came the moment, the one that would be clipped, shared, debated for weeks. Jasmine leaned forward, her tone sharper but still even. I continue to put people into office, she said. And that even includes some of our skin folk who are definitely not our kinfolk. People like you, Congressman, who use shared heritage as a shield while pushing policies that harm the very communities they claim to represent. Gasps echoed through the room. Aides looked up. Journalists sat forward. Donald's face hardened. Are you questioning my blackness? He said, his voice cold. I'm questioning the distance between your identity and your politics, Jasmine replied. And when you use that identity to excuse policies that hurt Black Americans. Yes, I think we all have a right to ask, who are you really fighting for? The chairman's gavel slammed down. Members will refrain from personal attacks, he warned, but it was too late. The air had cracked wide open. Donald stood halfway from his seat. You don't get to decide who's Black enough, Representative Crockett. Jasmine sat steady, eyes locked. And you don't get to rewrite history to suit a political agenda. The gavel slammed again. We are in recess. 5 minutes. But 5 minutes wouldn't be enough to cool the moment that had just been ignited. The hearing adjourned, but the conversation didn't. By the time Jasmine Crockett left the Capitol building, the clip had already gone viral. Her line, "Some of our skin folk are not our kinfolk," had been tweeted, subtitled, and dissected on every major news network. Cable hosts debated its meaning. Social media split into camps. Some praised her as brave for naming a truth few dared speak aloud. Others called it divisive, even dangerous. But in offices, classrooms, and barbershops across the country, something deeper was happening. People weren't just watching, they were reflecting, talking, remembering. That evening, Crockett sat alone in her office, scrolling through messages from constituents. Some angry, some grateful. One stood out. It was from a 72-year-old retired teacher in Georgia. I lived through Jim Crow. I've been waiting 50 years for someone to say what you said. Thank you for not letting them rewrite us. Across the city, Byron Donalds sat with his communications team. He was tense, jaw tight, eyes on the screen. Conservative outlets had his back, framing him as the level-headed leader under fire. But even within his base, there were questions. A few pastors, a local activist group. One donor's text simply read, "History isn't your enemy. Be careful not to treat it like one." The next morning, both representatives were invited onto different news programs. Crockett's interview opened with, "Do you regret the tone?" She answered plainly, "I regret that historical truth sounds like a personal attack to some. But I won't apologize for telling it." Donalds, on his segment, responded with, "We can't have real progress if every disagreement becomes a test of someone's identity. I stand by my values. That includes honoring how far we've come." But it didn't stop there. Students began writing essays about the exchange. Professors assigned it in political science and African American history classes. Podcasts broke it down line by line. One popular TikTok video spliced Crockett's speech with archival images from segregation-era protests, overlaid with the caption, "This is why memory matters." A week later, the two were scheduled to appear at the same education policy conference. Organizers weren't sure they'd speak. But to everyone's surprise, they both took the stage. The moderator broke the ice gently. "After everything, do you two still believe dialogue is possible?" There was a pause. Then Donald spoke first. "I believe disagreement is essential to democracy. But so is clarity. I never meant to romanticize the past. But I also won't pretend resilience didn't exist." Crockett followed. "And I believe accountability is part of representation. If we don't push back against dangerous framings of history, we risk repeating it." The room didn't erupt into cheers. It fell into a thoughtful silence. They still disagreed. Fiercely. Fundamentally. But something had shifted. Not compromise, just recognition. That even when worldviews clash, dialogue isn't weakness. It's responsibility. As they left the stage, a student approached them with an old photo of her great-grandmother. She walked to school during segregation, she said. I just wanted you both to know what you said. It made her feel seen. Both Crockett and Donalds paused. The moment wasn't political. It was human. And maybe, just maybe, that was the point all along.